be looking at solving some equations and kind of introducing the idea of what we call the distributive property. But before we get into that, let's practice a couple of the problems that we did on our last assignment, in particular those where we had to collect the like terms. Now in these three examples, I've already highlighted the like terms in different colors so that you can see where they are. So before we can solve it, let's go ahead and collect the like terms. So r minus 5r is going to give us minus 4r. So let's go ahead and write down minus 4r, and we still have that plus 7. So now we just have a simple two-step equation. So if we subtract 7 from both sides, and we're going to end up with, don't forget our barrier here, we got negative 8 equals negative 4r, and the 7's cancel out. So now when I divide both sides by negative 4, I'm getting a little tight on space here, but we fit it in there. We end up with r equals negative 8 divided by negative 4, which is positive 2. So that's our first one. On the second one, we've got negative 6n and negative 1n. So when we simplify this, we end up with 7 minus 7n equals negative 21. Now all we have to do is subtract 7 from both sides, and we end up with negative 7n equals negative 28. We're going to divide both sides by negative 7. And if you know your times tables really well, you can pretty quickly find out that that is n equals positive 4. Now we're going to need a little more space to do this next one, so let's pull that down. Let's go ahead and do a little simplifying, and that's all we're doing on this next one, is just simplifying rather than solving an equation. So let's start with the y terms. We got 3y minus 3y, that just equals 0. We have a negative 15 and 12. When you combine those two together, negative 15 and 12, that ends up being negative 3. And then you have plus 2x. The x term is by itself, so there's no like term to combine with it. So our simplified expression looks like that. All right, moving right along, we're going to talk about simplifying expressions using what we call the distributive property today. So the distributive property is basically this. If I have a number written in front of a set of parentheses, then I can multiply that same number by each item inside of the parentheses, which is a process that we call distributing it. So you can see the a has been distributed to each thing in the parentheses. So let's start out by first, let's look at this little expression and just simplify the following expression. So if you saw that expression, your most likely tendency would be to do 5 plus 2, which is 7, then multiply that by 2, and that would be how you could simplify it. You could even further go ahead and just do 2 times 7, which is 14, even though you didn't have to do that one in this particular case. But if I said simplify using the distributive property, what you would do in that case is you'd multiply 2 by each number first. So 2 times 5 is 10, and 2 times 4 is 4, and 10 plus 4 is 14. So that's a second way that you could do it. That might make things a little more easy to do depending on the problem you're working on. Now here's one where we actually ask you to simplify an expression, but in this case we actually have a variable. So here's how you would do that. You'd multiply 2 by each thing inside of the parentheses, and then just write down the result. 2 times x, we don't know what x is, so we just have to write 2x. 2 times 2, we do know what that is, that's just 4. So our simplified expression looks like that, 2x plus 4. All right, let's try this one. You're going to get all kinds of numbers, all kinds of variables in these expressions. So you need to know how to do each type. So if I have -2 out front, I multiply it by each term inside. -2 times x would be just -2x. -2 times -2 is how we would read that. That equals +4, because a negative times a negative is positive. That one might have surprised a few of you. Okay, how about if the number is behind the parentheses that you're multiplying by? Well, no problem. You multiply it the same way. So 2 times 3x. 2 times 3 is 6, so that's going to give us 6x. 2 times -2, a positive times a negative gives you a -4. So there's that example. Let's try this one. This is one that could stump a few people. If you just have a minus sign in front of the parentheses instead of some number, what do? Well, whenever you have just a minus sign in front of a set of parentheses, we want you to remember that there is also a 1 there. That's one way of writing this problem. So then you multiply that -1 times 4 like that, and you end up with -4x. And -1 times -2, negative times a negative is a positive, so you end up with -4x plus 2. That's how you would treat a distributive question when you just have a negative sign out front like that. All right, here's one that's going to require a little more simplifying. We have a 3x way over here, but right next to that we got the -2 times everything into parentheses. So I'm going to multiply this little thing by each thing into parentheses, and then we'll combine it with that 3x that's already there. So I'm going to write down 3x, and -2 times 4x would be -8x, and -2 times -2 would be +4. So when I multiplied -2 by each of those terms inside the parentheses, that's what I ended up with. So now I can combine the 3x and the -8x. Those combine to give you -5x. And you have +4 on the end. And that is your final simplified expression. All right, what else? You just got a couple more here, and then we'll get you going on an assignment. So here's one where you have 2 times 4x and 2 times -2. And then after you do that, you've got a +1 on the end. So in this case, let's go ahead and take care of the parentheses first. 2 times 4x is 8x. 2 times -2 is -4. And then you have -4 plus 1. And the -4 plus 1 would give you -3. So our final answer is 8x minus 3. So that's what that would look like. All right. So let's try a few of those by doing the simplifying expressions using the distributive property assignment on Alex. Thank you very much.